Sure. Kim Colvin, Board Secretary.
I'm Patrick Snyder. I'm one of our elementary curriculum coordinators.
I'm Kristen Wendland. I'm another one of our elementary curriculum coordinators.
I'm Kathy Moen. I teach 3rd grade at Horn.
Kristen Cannon, principal at Horn.
I'm Lacey Garrett-Sickles. I'm an instructional coach at Kirkwood.
Sydney Schroeder. I'm 2nd grade at Lemmy.
Emily Gann, 4th grade at Lemmy.
Shannon Leeson, instructional coach at Lemmy.
Ashley Mangan, principal at Lemmy.
I'm Sarah Farnsworth. I teach ELP at Horn and Lemmy.
Lucas Patagic, executive director of secondary.
Sean Eystone, board director.
Lisa Williams, board director.
Mitch Lingo, board director.
Brady Scott, I teach at Liberty.
Nick Proud, Chief Human Resource Officer.
You.
Sure. I'm the director of junior director of elementary schools.
Chase Ramey, Deputy Superintendent.
Jane Finch, board director.
Okay, Eliza, do you want to start? Oh, wait,
You have some minutes.
Sorry.
You messed up his chair already.
I swear we're missing something real quick.
First item is to approve the minutes of the April 15th, 2025 Education Committee meeting. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
Seconded by John. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved. And now then we can go on to the discussion items for this afternoon. Elementary teaming. So again, Eliza, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll just give a real brief intro here as a segue to Eliza, but just want to say thank you to our staff members that are here with us this afternoon to talk to you a little bit about elementary team teaching and some of the work they've been participating in as a group. And we always enjoy these ed committee meetings to get to talk to you guys about some of the practices that we're either committed to or are looking to improve in the district. And so excited to have our elementary colleagues with us tonight. Want to make sure we have an opportunity to address any questions you might have here at the end too. But with that, we'll have Eliza kick us off and move right into what they have to share.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Good afternoon. They already went around and introduced themselves, but this has been a fabulous team of educators that we've had the opportunity to meet with twice in the last 5 to 6 weeks to kind of really build out what team teaching can look like for us here in ICCSD. And so what we want to do this afternoon is just take you through the work that we've done so far. We're going to go on a couple different topics about the why, the what, the how, and then what's next as we think about continuing to pursue excellence for all of our kids. And so what we'll first talk through is the why and why we are embarking on something different than what we traditionally have done with our grade configurations. And so the why is to really what we're doing is to increase student achievement. This is something that we have, our student data is something that we've presented every year when we look at our annual progress report. And we give updates on how we're doing. And we've had this discussion over and over again about really trying to be intentional around our growth and our proficiency. And over the past couple of years, we have noticed that our data is trending downwards, and that's not the direction that we want to be going. And so we have spent a lot of time just really thinking about what can we do in order to start to see some gains and some growth in our proficiency and growth data. And so this slide depicts where we are with FAST, which is those universal screeners that we give 3 times a year, and then our Iowa statewide assessment of student progress, or ISAS. This again shows our math data, and math is something that we've talked about a little bit more explicitly over the year as our data in elementary and secondary is trending in a direction that we do not want it to go. And so we've continuously looked at different ways that we can provide instruction, looking at our materials to ensure that we are providing the best instructional methods and materials possible. Again, this is just elementary data, so you'll see the FAST and the ISAS. And then this is our science data. Over the past 2 years, we've had 58 students proficient and 59% of our students are proficient. So that is really the why of what we are wanting to, or why we're beginning to dig into looking at our model and suggesting that it's time for us to think about doing something a little bit different so that we can get different results. So So what we're going to go into next is the what. And so our why is to increase student achievement. And then our next big picture piece is the what around collective teacher efficacy.
There we go. So collective teacher efficacy, just meaning that we have the shared belief that teachers can positively affect our students, meaning if we work together, that we have better outcomes and better success with our students. There are 5 components to this, as you can see. The first one is high expectations. So we will guarantee, have a guaranteed and viable curriculum, meaning all students have access to a guaranteed curriculum, and that it's viable, meaning it's teachable within the time constraints that we have to teach these lessons. We're going to build strong student and teacher relationships. We know that's the foundation for student success. They're more willing to take risks. They're more willing to ask for help and to try harder when they have a good relationship with their teachers. And then we have high expectations for all students to grow. We know they come in starting at different places, so just knowing that they're all going to grow in some way, even if it's not all exactly meeting that benchmark, that they will all certainly achieve growth. That's the first component.
The next one is shared responsibility, so collective ownership for student results. This goes into the next one. All students are students, and I think about all in for all kids. And we're sharing our students, so we want to make sure that we're collaborating together and making sure that all of our students are successful, not just the students in our classroom, because eventually they will move on throughout our building. And then especially teacher wellness. We think about teachers having to spend all their time teaching all different subject content. So thinking about that like mile wide and inch deep, they're spreading out, so you can't really get into that deep focus. So when you think about an inch wide and a mile deep, they can really get into that content area.
So we also have the evidence-based practices, and so we know that we want to be using those research-based best practices, and a lot of times right now for our K-5 teachers, they kind of like what you were saying is they dip in and they dip their toe in and they're like, okay, so for reading we know all these things, and then for math we know all these things, and we throw lots and lots of information, but it's hard for a teacher to really master all of those areas, especially when we're thinking about those newer teachers coming in. From what I've seen, it's hard to become a master at all those areas, and so that they can really think about what those best practices are within certain content areas. And then with that, using like the new art and science of teaching, that's our HRS kind of framework, really digging into what does that mean within math, or what does that mean within language arts, and what does that look like in a class in that specific classroom context. And then we also have talked about those cross-curricular connections. Here at Kirkwood, we actually have been doing some team teaching the last few years, and we've had a 5th grade that did a Native American study, and then they were studying about Native Americans in social studies, and then in language arts they were making papers and writing papers and doing presentations about it, and it was a really neat kind of collaboration. So we're hoping to see even more of those kinds of cross-curricular connections.
And then trust and collaboration. So our vertical teams have grown, but now like our horizontal teams have grown, so we can really like stretch out and utilize all those different teacher brains in our collaboration, so we can make sure that all the kids are getting that instruction equally between them all.
Is this one Renee?
This one might have been Renee, yes.
Okay, would you like me to
Sure,
chat?
go ahead.
Okay, so this one is teaching with intent, and so what we've been talking about, but like that focused professional development, if you think about the different Thursdays we have throughout the year, right now, or other times of professional development, it's very much spread thin. One day is math, and then one day is reading, and then one day's all of the other different things. All of the things, SEBH, and so it's hard for teachers really to dig in deep and get a strong learning. And so that's where we really want to think about what can that look like if we really dig into it and spend more time becoming better around it. And within that, like teaching, you're teaching 2 times, so you get to practice it and you get to reflect right away and then take notes for next year versus teaching it one time and moving on.
So the collective teacher efficacy, that, if you're familiar with education research, John Hattie is kind of the guru when he's done over 800 meta-analyses of the effects of different practices that they can have on students. And so when you look at all of his research, the number one predictor of student success is collective teacher efficacy. And so that's, I think the effect size is like 1.47 or something wild like that. 1.57, thank you, Shannon. Where like 1 year's growth is like 0.4. And so to look at the effect size that collective teacher efficacy, and if we do that really well and build that within our systems, that we will have some pretty phenomenal results for our students. And so we're going to talk about what this means for our student experience.
So when we think about our student experience, we think about the structure for students. Obviously, we want them to have a well-structured environment, but we also really focus in on the student-teacher relationships, and that being able to have more teachers accessible to more students, knowing those students really well, is going to build those relationships, and also that buy-in for school, and just being able to feel safe and have those people that they connect with and may go to school, and it might be one teacher they connect with better than another teacher. So having that opportunity to be able to work with multiple teachers, and then in terms of the teachers, really getting to share each other's experiences and share their expertise when it comes to teaching styles and how they relate to students, and how it may work well. Student may be successful in one classroom, and how can we make that happen across all the settings for that student. These teachers will have a deeper content knowledge, so they'll really be able to scaffold and differentiate to meet the needs of their students and dig deeper. And then we know teacher wellness is a part too. Just having to know all the different subject areas and teach them, and know how to differentiate them, and know how to scaffold them, and how to meet them for all of the various student needs that are in a classroom. When you have that many content areas to teach, that becomes quite overwhelming.
Now we have the how on team teaching. Our vision is student growth and achievement soar when educators team teach together with purpose. Focus instruction and subject areas allows teachers to hone their craft and create consistent, high quality and innovative learning experiences for all students. With collaborative teaching and shared responsibility, data-driven strategies within a culture of wellness, teachers feel supported to be competent, effective educators, leading to better outcomes and new opportunities for students to be empowered and successful. On this next slide, you'll see the visual. It illustrates the integration of students and teachers beyond the traditional classroom boundaries, enabling collaboration with various expert teachers. This approach fosters teamwork, allows to refine their skills in specific content areas, and provides students the opportunity to learn from multiple experts. All right, so what we had done for an activity is we were really digging into what team teaching looks like, and trying to answer the question, how can schools be the collaborative engine for teacher impact and student success? And so these are 4 resources, and the team's going to kind of go through, and you'll see their posters. This is an activity. We're elementary people, so we like to use the markers and the Post-its to have our anchor papers here. And so the teams are going to share. Kristen's going to talk a little bit about breaking the egg crate model of schooling. If you click on those or had the opportunity to, those are articles or bodies of research that we use to kind of guide our work, and just some samples of what we started to dig into. They'll kind of share their key points and what they did, but I'll turn it over to Kristen to talk about breaking the egg crate model of schooling.
So this first one talks about kind of that traditional schooling model where we're all like eggs in an egg carton, right? I have my 27 students and I'm sitting really nice here and I impact them, but nobody else really has that same effect that I do. And so as we think about that, that can be very isolating for our new teachers, especially when we're looking at course of one and keeping teacher retention. And they're alone, they collaborate in PLCs, which is wonderful, but then they go back to their classrooms and their students don't really have that same expertise that a different student might have next door who's not with a new teacher. And so how can we really pull that expertise together and to build those relationships with different teachers and for student success and growth in all areas. So this would be breaking out of that mold of just having your students and really having all the students in that grade level and being able to be direct and impactful with what you know. So.
The next one is collective teacher efficacy, and Eliza talked about this already with the student achievement. It would, from John Hattie, the student achievement has the greatest impact, which is 1.57. Teachers will have a positive impact on students. All students can succeed and we can help them succeed. And then the big one that stuck out to me was collective efficacy outweighs an SES status. So when you think about a student coming in, even with that collective efficacy, we could really help them grow more than that 0.4 of a year. And then teachers are allowed to shine. When you think about collaboration and sharing all your students, you can now share strategies that work within that group of students. When you're sharing strategies, it might work with a different set of students, but really being able to show where you shine in a specific content area.
For the next education workforce, that's the second poster over there. It really was an article that kind of talked about how to make the system, how to like reimagine and how to make the systems work around some of this team teaching. And so we kind of identified 3 things: the team, the school, and the district level kinds of supports that are needed. So within the team level, it's understanding your role, knowing how you're going to wrap around the students. The school level was kind of engaging everyone, looking at schedules, making that work within the logistics pieces of it, and the support. And then the district level was those PD opportunities, and those learning opportunities and systematic supports.
Renee had our key facts about public. You look like you need your glasses. Would you like to come closer?
I did vision insurance this year, intending to go to get my eyes checked, but I haven't yet, so it's fine. The year starts in July, it'll be fine. I'll just keep it on for the next year. Renee Pearson, sorry I was late. For those of you who don't know, I'm the principal at Kirkwood Elementary. You did introductions, I assume you did.
Yep.
So I have the last one, which is the far poster on the far left. Key facts about public schools. So in this article, it really talked about just the teacher burnout and lack of support for new teachers in this egg crate model that we discussed. The idea that when all teachers support all kids, we get integrated supports and increased collaboration. So really, that article talked a lot about the difference between like a brand new teacher and then the teachers who have been in the gig for the next decade or so, and then we see the efficacy dip, and then it goes back up as you get more experience, more tricks in your bag. Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not bagging your tricks. From that point, just really understanding that what we've heard, I know I can speak to this from our building that we've been working through this, is that that team of teachers feels less alone, kind of in the struggle of things. So as a 2-section building, you've got the 2 classes. What it's been like in the past is we've really felt like this class is this teacher's and this class is this teacher's, and oftentimes that teacher feels super alone in that, like, if there's kids who are struggling or if there's kids who have really different academic needs. So collabing together more and having all kids are our kids model, both teachers get to know the kids, both teachers can work together to provide for the kids, and we've seen teacher efficacy grow in their attitudes about it within those grade levels that we've tried this with.
Now, one of the things that we hear from some buildings is, well, we've kind of tried this before, but they've tried it in isolation. And so, you know, they've tried it as, oh, our 5th grade is going to try to do this and fit this in schedule-wise. But instead, if we're able to kind of take this and think of the school as a whole and be able to work with the schedule that way, that's where we're going to kind of find that success then. And so some of the things that, gosh, it was a freezing cold day. School was actually canceled because it was so cold. We were all bundled up at CFI, like with a whiteboard in front of us, and we were scheduling out to see if this could work and what this would really be like for a building. And if we take the time and we look at this as a building as a whole, we really are able to put these pieces together. And one of the things that we determined is that our content minutes, we've been really tight on them and have said, okay, this is going to be exactly 75 minutes. This subject has to be exactly 60 minutes. But that also was a limitation then for people to be able to use some of these models. And so we're moving more to flex that from 80 to 85 for some of these blocks, which actually make a huge difference to have that flex time in there. And so those are some of the things that we are conscious of, as well as how is this going to work for specials? Because again, if you're only doing this as one grade level in your building, you're going to run into a lot of barriers. But if we're able to think of it as a system, that's where we find that magic sweet spot. Also thinking through our learning supports, you know, again, what does this mean for ELL, for special education, for ELP? Those are all layers that have to be included here, as well as intervention, lunch and recess. As much as I want to be like, come on, let's cut our time shorter. Nope, not going to do that. The kids need that time for sure. And same for all of our recess time as well. And then thinking as well for collaborative teams. We know that that is a huge piece that we have to ensure, is that our teams have time, mutual time, where they're able to meet together. So we can't be having one class have a special here, one class have a special there, and those teachers never being able to meet together. The last thing we also looked at was morning meetings and a closing circle, so that students will have a room that they start their day in and they end their day in that same space as well too, with that closing circle. Again, putting all these pieces together and thinking across the whole building, that's where we can find the magic here.
Yep, and that last box there was all about subject pairing, and so, no, you can keep going, it's fine. And so thinking about the section variability between all of our different schools, especially at the elementary level, we have some schools that will have 2 sections per grade and some schools that will be up to 4 sections per grade. And so the nitty gritty of what we're having conversations with teachers is like, okay, I can get on board with this. What am I going to teach? And so these kind of give some examples of what, if you're a 2-section per grade, so if you have 2 sections of 4th grade at your school, teacher 1, they might be the math and science teacher, and teacher 2, they might be the English language arts and social studies teacher. And we kind of paired those together because there's some natural interdisciplinary connections like Kirkwood has been exploring with. There's some really good connections between ELA and social studies. There's some obvious great connections between math and science. And then when you get into 3 sections or 4 sections per grade, there comes a little bit more variability that we've really played around with quite a bit. And so we might have a math teacher, an ELA teacher, and then somebody that does science and social studies. But because there's so many great interdisciplinary connections, they might also take on some of the writing from the ELA block, which frees up the teacher to focus in on some of the interventions that might have more time for, and maybe find some more engaging ways to engage kids with our writing programs and things like that when we're writing about science or we're writing about social studies. So there's some really great opportunities that we can learn from Kirkwood with and learn from teams that have tried aspects of these before. And this has been really exciting for our teams to dive in and discover and feel out what this could look and sound and feel like.
All right, so you might be thinking, like, what's next? What are we going to do with this after we present this information? I went to our building principals, oh gosh, I don't remember, guys, probably March, and just said, okay, if we just completely rethink how we do school and know that we need to go after student achievement, building relationships, teacher collective advocacy, and took some of the guardrails that we've just had on what could we do. And this was one of the things that people started talking about, is let's build our teachers' capacity to really dig deep into content. We keep putting things on our teachers' plates all the time. Is there ever a possibility we can start talking about what we're going to take off so that they can be really good at what they're doing? And this is one thing that we decided that we wanted to explore. And so I went to our 20 elementary principals and said, hey guys, anyone want to explore this with us? And these were 3 of the buildings that said, like, yeah, we're on board. And what I had asked of them is that we need to be flexible. We need to be forward thinkers and innovative thinkers. And we need to be willing to track our data through time and to work together throughout the rest of this year, a little bit over the summer and the next year to get this up and going. And so Lemmy, Kirkwood, and Horn were the ones that were like, yep, we're ready to go. After we've worked through, I presented it back to the principals and said, they all were like, well, me too, actually, we want to do this more also. But we also know we have to start small so that we can track all the different pieces and look at the data and see how things are going. And so there are 9 additional buildings that have at least one team that is going to try to live this experience within their building. And so we're providing our resources, helping with scheduling, the instructional minutes, the professional learning that they'll engage in. And so those are going to be occurring at the same time. When we first introduced this idea, the thought was that we would start in 2nd grade, and it would be for grades 2 through 5. The rationale behind 2nd grade is that is where we notice a real strong shift in the core and our standards dropping with support. In kindergarten and 1st grade, a majority of our standards are with guidance or with support, and the teacher is helping to drive that learning. You really want to go on an adventure with me, and we talk about the depth of knowledge, of Webb's depth of knowledge, and the depth in which kids need to be able to perform on a particular standard. We start to see application in DOKs of 3 or 4 in 2nd grade. And so that's what our first idea was like, okay, in 2nd grade. Brought it back to this group, and our resident 2nd grade teacher, Sydney, who she's like, please don't make me talk because it's really embarrassing. We just talked as a group and listened to her and felt like, maybe not yet. Let's start at 3rd grade. There was still some hesitancy around 2nd grade, and we, valued her opinion. I said my experiences with kindergartners and 2nd graders are like way big kids. And so for me, it was like, oh yeah, 2nd grade. And she was like, wait, I'm having a little bit of pause. And so she has an idea of what her and her teaching partner are going to, what she can share a little bit about.
So this year we decided to just switch science and social studies. We just have 2 sections 2nd grade. And just like diving into like a little bit, like starting it, they have responded really well. So I feel like that's really good first steps to like kind of get them ready for what they're going to be going into for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. But they still do get to experience both teachers. But we still have kids, they still get to leave for ELL, they still get to leave for title, all that good stuff. But we just felt like they were just maybe needed a little bit more of that emotional support in the classroom, seeing that like our super good curriculum is all like social emotional stuff. So we just felt like it would be better for them to be in a home base more of the day and then get to leave the classroom at different times.
So that's what we have decided moving forward with our pilot, that the 3 buildings we would unanimously be at 3 through 5, and then starting to dabble a little bit into it in 2nd grade and continue to monitor and see how that feels over time. So throughout the process, these are the things that the 4 big areas that we want to make sure that we're measuring to determine the overall success of the pilot, and if it's something that we want to continue to explore, or to know that if it's being successful or not. And so looking at student academic outcomes, the team had determined that those are 4 pieces that we want to make sure that we're monitoring the progress of throughout the pilot. Student connections to school are super important for us as we continue to explore team-based teaching, and so we wanted to look at attendance. Are we increasing attendance? Kids are feeling more connected to school, and our office disciplinary referrals with the ODRs. And then we do give students surveys. Right now, you probably most commonly know as My Savers, but in elementary, moving to Panorama surveys. So kind of that social emotional, how connected are students feeling? And we'll pick out specific questions within that survey to monitor and track that students are still feeling connected to school. To look at teacher efficacy, the SIG is something that we had reported to you guys earlier on this year. It's that strategy implementation guide and how our collaborative teams are working together in PLCs. So we'll hope that with increased teacher efficacy, we're seeing teams progressing on that continuum. We'll look at teacher retention, and then we give an HRS level 2 teacher survey. We just gave that to everybody, and so we're going to pull out some questions around that looks at having the opportunity to grow professionally, having time to plan instruction. So those are a few questions that we want to monitor and track throughout the pilot. And then teacher wellness. One thing that this team really felt passionate about was how can we get a good gauge on how our teachers are feeling. How are they feeling? Like, we didn't feel like we had a really good system yet of what if they're feeling burnt out, if they're feeling overwhelmed. We hear anecdotally of, what's going on, but we're trying to find a way that we can capture that. So that's something we're working on yet this spring. We think that if done well, we would see increased teacher attendance, participation in PD, and teacher retention. So those are the pieces that this team wants to monitor throughout the pilot to see if we are having those positive impacts. Those are fabulous themes. And I just looked at it, I was like, oh, Patrick is our sole male that is representing on that team. And as we look at that data, this is us in an elementary world. And as we were reading it, that is so true. Our own lived experience, my husband teaches over at Horn. He teaches 3rd grade. He has the very first opportunity that kids have, to have a male teacher. My own daughter's in 6th grade at Southeast, and just realized she's never had a male teacher until this year. She has all males but one now in 6th grade. And, it's just like, or students that are, are students of color that don't ever have the opportunity to have a teacher that looks like them. And if they only get the opportunity in elementary of 6 teachers, the fact that now we may have, each year I may have 2 or 3, the opportunity for them to have somebody that they really connect to is going to be greater. So this is our team, and they are full of optimism. And I'm just going to have a couple of them share what they shared at the closing. I forgot to tell you guys this part. But at the closing of, if done really well, what they're feeling most optimistic about. So do you guys remember what you shared?
I do.
Okay. If you could, we'll just have 3 of you share what you're most optimistic about.
I was optimistic about PLCs, so when our teams collaborate together, thinking about sharing all of our students and the great conversations we can have, and not just getting stuck on one topic and kind of just revisiting it over and over. We're really sharing all of those students, and I feel like we can have some really good conversations and help with student growth.
Thanks, Shannon.
I don't remember mine, but I can share what I'm thinking right now. I mean, I think I remember it a little bit, but mostly it's kind of the team approach to it. That's what I shared. And what I mean by that is, like, we've been doing a lot of these things at Kirkwood. We're always trying to do what's best. We're always trying to listen to our teachers, try new things, be innovative with how we're giving our instruction every day. And as we've done that, it's been in a silo, and it's just been kind of, we're just trying to make it work, right? And so my big excitement is having this be more of a systems approach. I'm a systems thinker. I like to think in how can we shift whole systems. So I'm excited with the district support of this. I'm excited about having other buildings. I have people who we can collab with. Our teachers have other teachers they can collab with in a really meaningful way around the work that we really believe in, which is moving in this kind of a direction where we're really good at a few things instead of having to be really okay at everything. It's kind of how we felt historically. So I'm excited about the team approach to it and the systems approach.
I'm really excited about student achievement, seeing that increase, teacher wellness, but then also just being able to really have teachers who come to us with different levels of experience to have that time to collaborate and share things that work for them in their classroom with different students, and the relationships that those students will build with all those teachers. I always think about this, like, I don't know, Eliza, I always think of it kind of at a medical approach sometimes, but I think like, oh my gosh, if I have something wrong with me, I'm going to go to somebody who's an expert in that field, right? And well, if I'm a student and I'm really struggling in math, I want to have somebody who really knows math and has been through all of the content and knows how to differentiate and knows what practices work. And so having teachers to get to that level of knowledge and to be able to really develop that for themselves and for their students, that the opportunities would be really great for students to just have all those teachers with all those different expertise, and how can they reach that group of students and help each one grow. So.
And I've seen that energy around teachers as they've started to think about, what they're going to be doing next year. When I was at Horn just last week a few times for some other math things, just teachers seeing me in the hallway and they're like, oh, guess what, I get to be the math teacher. Or, oh, guess what, I get to go and I get to focus on science and social studies. But, you know, they are really energetic and enthusiastic about what they get to do next year and the focus that they get to have too. And, you know, May can sometimes be a tough month. And sometimes you don't want to be thinking quite about next year yet. But for these teachers, when they really are, they're looking forward to this and thinking about what's to come and what's possible because of it.
And I think this team has come together really well and has taken a really innovative approach to trying to do great things for kids. And I think as we try to do bold things, we got to continue to do bold things. And so this is a really positive step in the right direction.
Thank you. Well, that is what we have for our presentation. We'll open it up for questions and discussion.
So, Eliza, since you guys elected me board chair, I'm going to take the
Please go first.
Here for a minute. And I have a couple things I'd like to say. One, I'm really, really pleased that this has been done with a team of teachers who are teaching and know what we need to try to change to be better at teaching. Second thing is that looking at the achievement data, that should convince any of us, I think, probably does, that we know how to teach kids to fairly low proficiency grades. We don't know yet how to teach kids to high proficiency grades. You have dedicated yourselves to figuring out how to change that, and that's great that you're doing that. I think I, as a board member, one of my roles is not to understand to detail what you're doing, but it is to support all that you're trying to achieve. And I hope I can do that in a way that is helpful and not irritating.
Thank you.
So are there questions from the board?
I didn't write anything down. I had a lot of thoughts as we went through this, so it was awesome. I appreciate it. I do think I like the piece on like building the student relationships. I know that my own experience with my son, who's graduating from college next week, when he was in second grade, he didn't have a good fit with this teacher. She was a great teacher, but they just didn't jive, and it was almost a lost year for him. It was just a struggle, and so I can see. If you don't have a good fit with someone, but maybe it's just for one class period or whatever it is, like you're going to have more chance to be successful. So I appreciate that approach to it. One of the questions I had, because I remember dating myself, like 45 years ago or something. I was in elementary school. I remember going to a different classroom specifically for math, and I think at that point it was probably to have differentiated instruction for different levels. So I don't know if that's coming into play here and able to target what stuff, like, are we still in the same cohort of kids moving around, and so you're not really doing differentiation?
That's a great question, and they would be staying in their same cohort of students. I think probably what you experienced a few years ago was student tracking, and we are not doing that based off of ability, because we know that kids, to be honest, the best teacher in the classroom is their own peers. And so when they're engaged in those, the way to have conversations and hear how other kids are solving problems, how other students are approaching different things. So we will not be tracking students based off of ability. They will be with their cohort of kiddos. So their classroom community will still be very strong because they'll be with their same peers. At least that's what we're planning on for this first pilot. Maybe we notice throughout that there is some opportunities for us to be more flexible, because the point that you brought up about your own child's second grade is real. And that is, as much as we hate to say that does happen, it does. And so it just allows for kids to be able to still stay with their peers and build that strong classroom community, but then have the experience with a different adult.
Can I jump?
Yeah,
my was saying the exact thing.
So they can arm wrestle for it.
I'm gonna let you say it.
Okay, so we talked with our fourth grade team think it was last week, we were just having this conversation and reflecting. And one of the biggest things that they told us that they loved is that the kids and them get a midday reset. And what they meant by that is the kids, they would have a kid and maybe was having a rough morning. They'd go to the other teacher and they saw a switch because it's a different person, it's a different thing. And also the teacher was like, oh my goodness, this kid, you know, in real life, there are students that get under our skin, right? Like that's just, and we try to pretend like it isn't, but there are students that are hard. And so giving them that switch too, and they're like, I'm gonna start with a new class this afternoon. So even though the last 2 hours were really rough, I can start fresh. And that's what they loved, and they really felt like they'd seen that. We have talked about with at Kirkwood for next year, one thing that we're thinking about is kind of switching which subjects are in the morning and the afternoon, maybe midway through the year, so that the teacher that taught that math the second time, those kids are getting that kind of switched, so that they're getting that more experience, and just because we know certain students at certain times of the day are more fresh than others. So.
No, I really appreciate that because I spent some time in the classroom, and what I saw, like, same exact lesson, right? Each class had just a different vibe, right? So this set of kids, like this one's just energetic and talking and whatnot. This next one, they're all just sitting there like little minds. and so it was kind of fun to see that change throughout the day of like just that personality shift. So that was pretty cool. I did one last comment, and I'll open it up to others. I appreciate the slide that Patrick showed that talked about if you had a 2 section or a 3 or a 4, because that was what was in my head, like how are you going to make that work in the different size schools that we have? So I'm curious as to how that plays out, but I appreciate that you put some thought into what that looks like.
That's also the reason why we selected the schools that we did, because Renee over at Kirkwood, they're predominantly a 2-section building. Horn is pretty much a 3-section building, and Lemmy has a little bit of 2 and a little bit of 3. We do have some thoughts about what a 1-section building could look like, but wanted to just kind of figure this piece out first before we ventured as to what that could look like. And essentially a 4-section building is the 2-section double. So they would kind of follow that, or we had thought through some other potential options. So a lot of things are on the table for what this could look like, but for these 3 buildings with the 2 and 3 section is where we're going to begin.
And so it's one cohort of students, and will the students stay in the same classroom, or will the students move? Will the students stay and the teacher moves, or will the teacher stay in the students?
Good question. We had a lot of discussion around that, and I think our teachers feel very passionately at this point that the students will move and the classroom stays. You think about how much setup, like a science lesson, we're like, are we going to carry the crawfish across the hallway? No, that wouldn't go well. And so we had talked about that. I think to start, they felt like staying in their own classroom, because each classroom has kind of their own personality too. And like if they had their, like Emily Gann, I am fortunate enough to know that she's the queen of anchor charts and anchor posters of, for like the different things that kids anchor back to for vocabulary. So like their classroom would be really set up around that content. So it would probably be best that the kids transition, but they are with the same 25, 27 kids throughout.
And so I'm just trying to figure out in my mind how this is going to work. So will there be teachers that are teaching different grade levels as well? So they might be teaching ELL in one grade and ELL in another grade, or is it just limited to one grade that they're teaching?
ELL, like our support teachers?
No, I'm sorry, ELA. I didn't mean ELL.
Oh, they would just be teaching their own grade at this point.
Okay, and then can you expand upon what these other 9 buildings are doing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So very similar to like what Renee is doing now is her 5th grade team is doing team teaching. 4th grade is still doing their, 4th and 5th. 3rd grade is still doing self-contained. So for the other 9 buildings, it might be like their 3rd grade team is going to team teach, but their 4th grade, 5th grade is not.
Okay. Okay.
So we just had the 3 buildings do the whole system so that we could really monitor those pieces. But for those of you that have had children in elementary school or have talked to other families, like my own 4th grader, for example, at Hoover, they are already and have been doing something very similar to this. When I was the principal here at Lemmy fifth grade and sixth grade have done this throughout the past several years. What's different is our system didn't really support it. And so even though they taught language arts in fifth grade, they didn't teach math, they were still required to go to all the math PD. And so they still had just that surface level knowledge because they were gaining the math knowledge but never applying it because they didn't teach it. And so for this, we would design our professional learning as if you're fifth grade ELA, when we have curriculum-based PD, you'll go to ELA PD and we'll really deepen that skill set, and they'll get the opportunity to collaborate with other fifth grade ELA teachers to talk about their scope and sequence, their standards, the instructional practices and routines that they're using within that content.
Mike, I'm just really excited to see how this shakes out next year. So I've got a fourth grader at Penn, and they're doing kind of the model. She goes to a different classroom for science and social studies, and so like I am not trained to be a teacher, so all of the like benefits for teachers. But I can tell you, she comes home and she really likes it. And it's exactly what you guys were just talking about with Sean about the reset, because each of those classrooms has a different vibe. And she is her main classroom is a classroom full of really rowdy boys, but the mood changes in those, and it's a bit of a break, and it's one classroom's quieter and one classroom's more strict, and she just really enjoys that switch. And so I can see globally how that's going to benefit our students, because at least she raves about it. So I'm excited to see it broadened, and building-wide, I think there are going to be some really cool benefits in seeing how that works out. So I look forward to like our ed committee meeting next year when
we're all back together. Yeah.
Well, you want to go or you want to just?
No.
First, the one thing that I would like to see on the measurable outcomes is parent surveys of before and after. One thing that's not lost on me is that we are sitting in a building that's in its attendance zone, it's walking distance to two different private schools. And that's always, if there's a socio-cultural expectation of the way elementary education is supposed to be, then we're going to dramatically change that. I would like to know how the parents feel, because without parents choosing to use us, you don't have teachers. Without teachers, you don't have administrators. And yeah. So in education policy circles, teaming typically referred to as departmentalization. I'm saying part of this, some of you know this already, and part of it is for the public and representing some of the opinions that I've heard from the public. Learned this middle school model when I was at UNI, taking middle level certification. You know, you just pod into, like, when I went to Linn-Mar, it was 100 kids. You had 4 teachers, you had a main teacher. But overall, we switched between reading and math to give us probably somewhere between transitioning and after specials, 5 to 6 students, 5 to 6 teachers a day. And so when I first heard about departmentalization from ICCSD in March, you know, just like everybody else, rumor mills around town. And I didn't really think anything of it, because I figured it would just be maybe 5th grade or something like that. And on top of that, I just came across my ed policy podcast that I enjoy listening to. That just highlights some research findings showing that going through past departmentalization research where harming mathematics and reading, in contrast to the current paper, showed that it had positive impacts on math and reading during the first year of middle school among elementary students that experienced it. This was in Massachusetts. The next day when I learned about being down to 2nd grade, I realized I needed to do my homework. I'm the type of person that uses data to help look at what is happening. That's just who I am. But, you know, one of the things that kept on occurring, you know, what's fun about scholarly papers, that's just me, but they give you the point counterpoint, so all your points are there as the positive points, and then the counterpoint is, you know, that elementary buildings are their own unique environment, especially to a lot of parents. You know, that for some of us, and I have a kindergartner, so that's partially my view, and maybe my view will change when I have a 4th grader, who knows. But, you know, we view that teacher as someone that becomes who we trust, who we send our child to. And we want that one-on-one, for a lot of us, we want that one-on-one relationship. My wife likes to refer to it as handing off her mom to another mom. Sorry for the men in the room and the male teachers, but that's just the way that she refers to it. And one of the things that I think comes back to on me is just the amount of transitions that we may be adding into an elementary student school, where you start to lose some of those relationships. So I decided to go into the research, take a look at what it says. There's a few studies on it. There's not a wide amount of research, I'll give you that. There's some studies out of Houston Public Schools, a series of studies from state administrative data in North Carolina, another from Indiana, and a series of studies from Massachusetts. First, science does well in this model. It's interesting to kind of come about that because it gives them protected time to teach science, right? And that's always something that's one of those, science kind of gets regulated to the side. It is what it is. I hope we don't do it, and I'm pretty sure we don't. But regarding math, reading and math, I just have to express a healthy dose of skepticism. Reading was concerned. The Houston study showed a 0.34 standard deviation decrease. Indiana data sets 0.2 standard deviation decrease, and then negative mixed effects in North Carolina, while Massachusetts showed a 0.4 standard deviation increase. So depending on the data set, it's roughly you take a student from the 50th percentile. For the most negative, they ended up in 48%, the most positive 51.6 percentile. And that was Massachusetts. Looking at the long-term data in Massachusetts, shows that the positive effects in middle school dissipate after the first year. Math, which is one of the questions that I kind of go back to, is who gets the joy of teaching math? I was one of those teachers that, because I did not have seniority, I was able to get the joy to teach math. So it's like, how are we going to staff math? That's one of the questions that occurs in my mind. But this is one of the areas where, of course, they found some of the largest decreases. In Houston, it was 0.4 standard deviation. North Carolina, depending on the model or grade level, is either a -0.86 standard deviation to a -0.18 standard deviation. Massachusetts, they did find a small to moderate increase, 0.02 standard deviation. So again, depending on the model, 50th percentile, anywhere dropped to the 46.6 percentile or boost to the 50.8 percentile. Other studies show negative associations in achievement. For the ones that show negative achievement already show more negative achievement for marginalized students. The Massachusetts data set shows positive achievement for marginalized students. Teacher retention in North Carolina was significantly higher, so I will say that, higher among schools that had departmentalized models, but those were primarily concentrated in the higher achieving and affluent buildings. And so I will end up on the idea, I'm all about shaking up elementary school modality if the preponderance of evidence is there. So I really hope a year from now I can be proved wrong in my skepticism.
Are there any other comments from board members?
I do want to say that, we all had the opportunity to see the no school model the past couple of weeks. And I really took a lot from speaking with those sixth grade teachers who were really thrilled to be able to be focusing on one subject. And so when you talk about teacher wellness and burnout, that I understand how important that is and how this can look desirable for our teachers. I do also worry that doing the same thing every day and only focusing on one subject, how that could also lead to burnout too. I'm kind of there with my job right now because I am specialized and I'm starting to feel a little burned out. So I do kind of wonder about that, but I appreciate all the points that you brought up with the teacher wellness and the student experience. My son in second grade also had very similar experience. It was a very long year, so I just, I appreciate all the work that you put into this. Thank you for presenting to us.
I'd like to add also that I have my perspective as a board member is that our kids were in elementary school 20 years ago. So my perspective, I think, in my mind, is that I'm trying to look at the entire district. And as I said at the first, we know what we can do in this district with academic achievement, and we don't want to continue that. So whatever the research is for other districts, we know what the research that we have says about our district. And we're going to try to change that. That's why I'm so enthusiastic and supportive of what you're doing here, both administrators and as teachers. I think we can do that. We can make a much different district over the coming few years.
Thanks for that, Charlie. I think like one thing. Oh, sorry. Brady, you
Well, I
want to go
would-
first?
I'll go first, so you
Okay.
can. I just want to, piggyback off what Charlie and others have said. I appreciate that we're, teacher wellness, that is a, passion of mine and something that I share concerns about. And so, when Eliza came and said, hey, we have some ideas and we think we can improve in student achievement, be innovative, increase collaboration, and also help with teacher wellness and take some things off their plate, I was thrilled. Like, all right, let's have that conversation. So I just want to say thanks to everyone for being out there in the forefront of doing that work and, giving her a shot and collecting data. And I think the difference, it has been happening. It's happening already in the district. It's happened in the past, this similar model. I love that we're looking at it from a systems level and also trying to think about professional development and learning differently and collecting data differently. So I just think it's fantastic the work that's being done. Anything you need that I can help with, I'm here to help. And, thanks for everything you do.
Thanks for eating.
I just have one quick comment. Our three daughters were products of Iowa City Community Schools. I just asked them, what do you guys think? And what do you think of this idea? They all have kids now. And they said, well, Mom, that's what we did at Wickham. And it was 30 years ago for my kids. And then I talked more to my middle daughter, who's an elementary teacher, and just about the benefits. And she said she got to be such a better math teacher when she was teaching only the math part, that she really could figure out how to work with all levels and how to teach it. And so, listening to you all with the same thoughts, I really respect what you're saying, and I think it's a great idea to move forward with this.
The part about math is, to Director Lingo, the part about being stuck with math, I think a lot of our teachers were like chomping at the bit for math. Because, as you know, we have a new math curriculum this year, and it is so engaging, and seeing the kids start to have agency over their own learning and to be able to facilitate that conversation, it's so fun to see the teachers that are like, I love teaching math now, because it is not that prescribed, we're just going to do this, open your math book and go. It is such a fun, engaging math community. Don't get me wrong, it was pulling teeth at the beginning of the year because they had to build it's a math community. We invite them in to be mathematicians. But now that they're going, it is so fun to see our teachers teaching math. So the ones that in these three buildings were sort of like, who gets to do math? And some have had a conversation of, do we do this for, Emily's over here like, I won the math. If we've had conversations of do we switch every 3 or 4 years if they have that same team? Or the beautiful thing is in our buildings, we do have the ability to move people around, and we do that a lot already over the years, and so it's an opportunity for teachers to continue to get that experience.
Can I add something as well that I think sometimes people have this view of elementary schools that I grew up in, where it was I'm in the classroom all day long as a student. And a lot of our schools, we have so many different support services that students are moving around the school constantly. It's often a puzzle for teachers and us at different places to try to put together, okay, this student is going to go to their English language learning class, then they're going to have their small group reading with their teacher, then they're going to go to their special education, then they're going to go to their title. How do you get all of these different supports? And so students are already moving around so much that what we have found when we've done it is that the move to a different classroom is just a quick
reset,
and it's really not, because they're in and out and there's kids in the hallways going different places often, and that's just a different view than maybe we've traditionally held of a school.
just want to pass along my thanks for you all being here and sharing your expertise and your passion with the board, for engaging with us in what I think is exciting work. The one comment I want to build, maybe two. The first one I want to build off is what Jane said and Brady echoed about the teacher wellness. Thanks for taking care of each other. Like sitting here as you were talking through the slides, and especially folks on that, it was like an aha for me. I was like, Nick and I have this conversation all the time about how we take care of our teachers because you take care of our students, and then we look at those things about the ability to interact cooperatively, the ability to build networks, to live your calling, and then to see you all bring this together. It's like, okay, why didn't we just ask them a long time ago what you all needed to be successful, not only professionally but also personally, because those things about burnout are so true. And so I really appreciate you keeping student achievement at the forefront, but also understanding that if we don't take care of each other, that we're not going to have the great teachers in the classrooms to provide that leadership for our students. So thank you for that, to be part of the equation. And to Director Arlingo's point, I do think that the parental feedback is good. I think we do need to have that and have that voice. The only thing, and I've shared this, my disenchantment, my only frustration, I'm just going to go with that, of this is you took it away from second grade. Because as the parent of an incoming second grader in one of the pilot schools that we might be sitting in, I'm really excited to see that and to be able to get a first-hand view of that. And so just thank you for doing what you're doing, and what Patrick said, like, to be bold. I think you said it a great way, like, to do bold things, we have to do bold things. And in Iowa City, we've never shied away from that, right? We've always said that we're on the front edge of what we know is best for kids and what we want to do. And I think this is just another example of your leadership and taking the district where we wanted to go. So thank you.
Nice summary, Chase. Yeah. I think Chase did a nice job of pulling most of it together there, but a lot of the same points I would connect to. But one of the wellness things I thought about is also supporting your ideas right when they come forward and giving you the opportunity to build those. And so, however, whatever the path was, that it got to today, I think that's an important point. Just when we do talk about teacher efficacy too, right? Is the belief that we can, and the belief we can make an impact, and that we can come together as a group and impact this differently. The thing I'm thinking about, I was going to mention that too about parents. I think anything we do, getting parent feedback, of course, is an important point for us. So I think, agreed, that's a good one. On the research end, I wonder, I'd be skeptical of the fact that, that the amount of system support that's coming in with this model would be the same as what we've seen in other research studies on just the idea of departmentalization or team teaching. We're focused on the research aspect of how to build a teacher's capacity, and we know the effect size there. But I also, as we think about that, I wonder if there's even an opportunity for us to look at a research piece around what we do, right? And how we have aligned all of the other supports to it, knowing that we're going to collect a lot of data. There may be an opportunity for us there to be a part of that as well. Now, there's a lot of hurdles and a lot of logistics that go with that. But my other point I had thought about with that too, when you're talking about the other 9 buildings, is making sure, in some way we probably almost disaggregate the data from the 3 buildings that are committed to the system stuff, and then what happens in the buildings where maybe the whole system can't support, to this point yet, about all of the frameworks that are put in place to support the teacher and the success of the teacher in that end. So again, thank you for sticking around some extra today, and just for taking this on. We know anything new and different is a whole other element of work, but just trying to think about that and keeping us moving forward and pushing forward. To Director Easton's point about, we know the data we get when we do it like we're doing it, right? And so we have to be able to take some risks and try some things different. And so I'm proud of you for doing that, so thank you.
And one last invitation is you'll see kind of a little bit about the potential of what this could continue to do for us. I know Matt had provided you a little bit in his update on Sunday, but on Thursday and Friday we have another pilot of 6 buildings that are doing 4th grade flood heroes. We are going to solve the problem around how the community can come together if there was, in the event of a flood. And so what it is it's been 6 teachers along with Patrick and Kristen and our curriculum team that is putting together a really awesome event that kind of culminates our science and social studies standards. Again, when they've had the time to focus on these pieces, we've seen some really cool things. Ms. Superintendent Degner will not be coming down in the helicopter. That's where it started. He still will be in the helicopter at some point because they are. There is some drones that we've been able to connect with a lot of great community partners at the Center for Innovation and do a really. We have what we think is going to be a really cool event planned on Thursday and Friday in the morning, 9:30 to noon. So we hope that you're able to join us at either one of those days and to see just again, it's no surprise to you, but the amazing work that when we, that our teachers are capable of doing when we pour into them and provide them, I think as I'm learning it's the big P, permission. Like a lot of time that's what they need is permission to think outside the box. And when we provided the parameters and said, okay, here's my idea, what do you, and Patrick's probably done with my ideas, by the way, but it's like, here's this idea, what could we do with it? They come up with nothing short of genius ideas. And so I hope you're able to see us on Thursday and Friday, and just a little snapshot of what I think we'll continue to see from the great people that we have here in our district. So thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you very much, Laura. And just to finish up our agenda here, our next education committee meeting is going to be Kim, do we have to decide?
Probably be
Probably
September.
We're off for a while.
September?
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. And opposed. Thank you very much for adjourning. Thank you very much.